All right, welcome everyone to Flux's first Code Your Own Website workshop. A long time in the making. Today, if you want to, and I suggest you all follow along, by the end of this workshop, you'll have your first, maybe for some of you, website. This is going to be like pretty intro. We're just going to be going over, this is kind of like the steps or kind of what we'll be going over. I think we'll kind of just like skip past idea time unless you guys want to like spitball ideas. And then after that, we'll just make sure everyone's kind of set up with Glich, which is the environment that we're going to use to make our website. After that, Varun will bless us with some HTML knowledge, and then I'll kind of demo going through structuring your site with HTML. And then after that, and then we'll kind of just do a check, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure everyone's kind of knows what they're doing. After that, we're going to go over CSS. First, going over layout, structuring how it should be how everything should be positioned, spacing of everything, how it should scale depending on what device you're using. And then after that, and then we'll do another check. And then the remaining time, we'll kind of spice things up with some visuals. And just as a warning, we have a lot to go over. So it might go a little bit past 3, but we'll try to stay on time. Is anyone cool with that? Cool. Awesome. So before we jump into it, why learn the code? I mean, you guys have some sort of interest if you've landed here today, but I'm not sure what you guys have thought about coding or coding websites in the past. But it really is not as intimidating as it may seem. And I hope today, welcome. Hopefully today, at least you guys find coding, or at least coding websites, a little bit less intimidating. Learning websites offers a lot of things: new perspective, more control over final output. If you guys are UX designers, I'm sure you're like, I want that button to be like this smooth and like this plays, but like Wix like just doesn't do that for you. This could be a good option for you. And it's an incredibly useful skill regardless of what field you're in. I believe some people here are from all sorts of majors, which is awesome. And it's fun. I promise you it's fun. I promise you, I hope you guys have like a little bit of ounce of fun today. And the other thing with websites is that I think a lot of time we become stuck to this is like my little spiel. A lot of times we become stuck to our platforms. Things like, Instagram. I mean, UX designers in here, how many UX designers here actually post their work on Instagram, right? And it's not like we don't use Instagram. It's just the platforms we use change over time and they change structure. But by being able to create your own platform, you get to structure it and sculpt it from the ground up to the work you make and how you want it. So for people who just walked in, today we're going to be making our own custom link tree. So real quick, we're not going to go over this too much, but think of a list you would want to share on the internet. For instance, favorite movies, pizza toppings, inspiration. I made a couple of examples that this is blocking right now. There we go. Made a couple of examples. So it could be just like a traditional link tree, which has your socials. This one is best Savannah cafes. Like this has the website or each cafe's website and online order. Could be a useful tool in the morning, we're trying to figure out what to drink. But it also could be something really silly. We have best UX professors in alphabetical order. So if you guys haven't already, think of your idea. Keep that in mind. Anyone have any cool ideas that they want to share? Matt wants to do best FLUX officers by stars. Okay. Which is a choice. Rating professors. Yeah, you could do that. Your own I don't know how SCAD. Yeah, I don't like how SCAD would do that. Anyways, okay. So for new people, again, who just got in here, we're going to be using Glich. Glich, for those who you have already, if you haven't made your account already, feel free as I'm talking to just follow this instructions on the right. Glich is a platform for creating websites. All the code, all the source code and the code editor is all like inlined in Glich, which makes it stupid easy to create quick websites and to recreate websites as well. They handle the hosting, the domains, the server things, so you don't have to. I'm just going to quickly go over like what that would look like, especially for people who just got in here. So if you make a Glich account, you should have your name up here and everything. If you go to this link, which is also right there, you should get the starting file for today's workshop. Yeah, let me, just learn how to do this. Here's the link right here. Wow. Yeah. Thank you guys. So they made it really easy. So you have to scroll all the way down to find Remix Another right here. After this, it'll kind of load this scary page. Kind of go over what's happening here really quickly. Here's your code, obviously. All the code will kind of be in this center box right here. On the left, there's a couple things going on here. You're going to have an index file. This is where your HTML is. You're going to have a CSS file. This is where your CSS is going to be. I'm sorry if you guys got that weird fragment. And then a JavaScript file that we will not touch today. Feel free to play around with it if you want. These are all going to be under this files thing right here. There's also assets. If we have time, we might play around with inputting our own images and things like that. Essentially what you would do is just, if you have an image on your desktop, you just drag it right into here. We can talk about this more later, but you essentially have to use this created link right here when you link it. So again, we're going to go over that. And then what's kind of important is you might have like a really random name right here. What I would suggest, if you click settings and go to edit project details, this is your domain right here. So this is essentially what's going to be whatever, like for this one, it's like, well, this is actually the file itself. Like your domain will be like cfyw-starter.glitch.me. So if you want it to be like Varun dot or like whatever demo, you can't use spaces, but you can use dashes, but just save that there. And then just refresh your page. So that's good. And then on the right side, we have what your website is right here. This is what the output of your website. So if I just create a quick p tag right here, say like, hi, it'll show up right here. What's also kind of important, come on, sit down. What's also important, which I highly recommend you guys do, is if you click this little 3 dots right here and go to open in a new window, here's your website. So it's right here. If you refresh it, this is everything that you're going to be making. If you want to share this, if I want to text this to my mom, I can, or text it to your friends, whatever, this is the link. But any changes that you make here will automatically be updated on the right side. But for here, you're going to have to refresh it. So yeah, that's kind of the basics of how Glitch works. I'm going to be asking a lot. If anyone has any questions, please, if you have questions, please let me know. Is anything I might have missed or anything confusing to anyone? Laura, here's the steps right here.
Stay on the screen for a little bit.
Yeah. I'm gonna 3 little lines. Yeah, so right here on the right, right here on the right, you'll see these 2 right here. You can actually, so you can either refresh from here, you shouldn't have to do that. If you want to stop it, you can, but again, don't worry about that. The one on the right, you can either copy or open a new window. Open in a new window is what we want. So here, open a new window. And this is, and you'll also see on the right, like if you can also just use this link right here, whatever it says for you, is the link to your website. Oh, last thing, I'm also gonna be pressing this button a lot, this prettier button. What it's gonna do is like, this looks kind of ugly right here. It's like not indented correctly or whatever. If I just click that, ooh, some sparkles and it'll clean everything up. It's just like really easy instead of having to like figure anything out. So if you ever see like the code change, I'd probably click this button. Does anyone have any, is anyone on? I know some people just, yeah, what's up? Sorry. So here are the instructions. Make a Glitch account, go to here. And if you have ideas, if you have ideas of like a list of things, think about that. Cool. Does anyone, any cool ideas? I'm gonna be making some boring. You're gonna be making shapes? Different shapes? Okay. What? Different pasta shape? Okay, now we're talking here. That's pretty good.
What about pasta sauces?
Pasta sauces could work too. Yeah. If you guys want to, while we're, because while you guys want to, if you guys have time, feel free to do it later too. I just kind of listed out, I'm gonna do my favorite albums from this past year. So I kind of just like listed out all the links that like they'll go to. Like if you're doing like pasta noodles, you could like link it to like the Wikipedia. I don't know if there's a Wikipedia page for each pasta. Okay, then you could maybe do that or whatever. Towards the end, I might demo how to like have an image, kind of like these all have images within. I'm not gonna do that at first just because I want to make sure we get through everything, but I'll include how to do this later. Yeah, that's my number one. Yeah. We could talk about this afterwards. We'll skip over. Yeah, but I just had some colors for things, but feel free to change. So we probably should have like introed ourselves too. So we'll spend once you guys get this set up, we'll kind of quickly intro, but yeah. Let me know people who like. Is everyone this far-ish? Cool. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So we'll move forward. First step is HTML and structuring. So Varun is gonna kind of talk a little bit about HTML and then we'll demo. Okay, yeah. So I forgot to intro myself. So my name is Andrew. I'm a UX senior here. I'm also co-director of FLUX. And I've been making websites for the past like 5 years. And I've made a lot of different websites here at SCAD, like Startup and Commotion and a couple other ones. And yeah, and then we have Varun.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Varun. I'm also a UX senior. I'm actually the senior web designer for FLUX. Matt at the back is the junior web designer. And he clearly needs his workshop. Yeah, the curriculum is based around Matt's needs. So if you guys feel like you're not learning something, blame Matt. But I've been coding websites for like 6.5 years now. And despite that, Andrew's probably better than me. But first off, we're going to cover a little bit about what HTML is. Like, we're probably just tossing around these terms, HTML and CSS, and you're like, that means nothing to me. And hopefully by the end of my little lecture, not more than 10 minutes, you'll understand a little bit about it, and then Andrew will move on to a demo. So the goals here are to understand basically what tags are and how they work, and then also understand how to generally structure your site so that you can create the website that we're going to be creating by the end of today. So the first thing we want to talk about is HTML. What does that stand for? It's broken down into hypertext markup language. Again, probably still gibberish. And we can break it down word by word. Let's start off with language because that's the simplest word to explain. It means it's a programming language. Like, very surprising. But the two more important parts are hypertext and markup. So what hypertext is, it's talking about the idea of being able to use text to connect things. And particularly this is important for the web because the web is built off of connecting sites. So you're using links to connect to another thing. So this is really fundamental to the way the web works. Links are crucial. The second part, markup. Markup means that you're defining structure. You're telling something that I want it to look this way or I want it to be structured this way. So you're marking it up to be like structured in a specific way. So together, links, structure, programming language. So that's what you'll start seeing as we start going into it. The markup part is the most important one. Links are very important, but markup is what really matters because HTML is all about structure. Now, let's talk a little bit about the markup or what HTML is by default. You're seeing this image on the screen, and I'll explain it in a second, but a lot of people presume that coding would be like a canvas, where you take a paintbrush and you can paint anything anywhere. The problem with that is that computers struggle to understand location, and also on the web, we have a problem of different screen sizes. So if we're defining the absolute, like paint in the bottom corner on my screen might be different from the bottom corner on your screen. So we have to design in a more efficient way. So the way that we actually do it is we actually do, I like to call it like the reverse skyscraper. So you're building from the top to bottom, and you're building in like horizontal slabs. So I know this is a website frame, but just imagine the gray section is the website frame, and then each of these are floors in that building. So this is the top floor, but like obviously we're building from top to bottom. So think of it like bottom floor and then top floor at the bottom, because you scroll up on a website. So this is how we actually build a structure. We define tags that actually end up taking the whole width of a page. And within that, you can do subsections further. So floor could have like subsections within it. So instead of thinking of this as a floor, maybe think of it as like a group. So like this is a penthouse with 2 floors. This is a penthouse with 3 floors. You're definitely rich to afford that, but think of it in that way, where you're building a reverse skyscraper from the top. But the problem is you're probably like, I want to build this. I don't want to just build things that fill up the whole width. And this is possible, but HTML by default is not what handles this. You actually start by structuring it this way. So if you have 3 blocks this way, then you can flip it to be 3 blocks horizontally, but that's handled by CSS. So for now, worry about building your site from top to bottom. Don't worry about the horizontals quite yet, but do think about the grouping. So example, you do want something to go 3 horizontally. It has to be inside of something that contains 3 elements. So worry about grouping. Don't worry about the direction it's traveling in quite yet. Now, in terms of the code that we're going to be writing itself, what does an HTML element look like? So this whole thing that you're seeing on the screen, I've been saying the term, it's an element. And what an element is that piece of code that tells you to mark it up in a specific way. And there's many different types of elements, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's telling the code to be structured, the website, that this is a specific type of item. So this is an image, this is that, or what this is that, whatever it is. You're defining that that thing that the computer understands to convert into what it is. And what's important with HTML and CSS specifically is that it works by an opening and a closing tag. So the closing tag has this slash indicating it's a closing tag, whereas the opening tag doesn't have that. And then in between that is where the content goes. And the content could just be a piece of text, or it can be more tags. So for example, if we go back, this could be the tag, and then there could be 3 new tags inside of that. And that could be the content for that tag. Can be a little confusing, but the way when you start seeing the code structured, you'll see it's indented based off of this grouping. But the tag itself is important because it helps you know where the start and end of it is. And that's why it's important to define it, because if you don't tell it where it ends, it doesn't know how to group things, because we group things by essentially enclosing them. But in the opening tag, there's also another important part to it. There's something called attributes. So it's telling that tag to be modified in a specific way. And I haven't explained it quite yet, but what an A tag is, it's something called an anchor tag. And what an anchor is, it's a link to a different site. So we're actually seeing the preview of what this would create. So this would create a go to Google link. So what we're doing with href, which is the name of that attribute, is telling it this link needs to go to google.com. We can also do other things with this link and modify it in specific ways in the structure itself, but that's not so important right now. In terms of the tags that we'll be using today, we'll be covering a few, and some of them are on the screen, but there's also this page by Mozilla, which is the company that handles Firefox, as well as Andrew is going to be sharing W3 Schools, which is a great resource. But these are different tags that indicate different structures. So this is going to be a header. This is going to be a divider, which is a way of grouping things. This is a paragraph, image, and then the anchor tag, which I just covered. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it back to Andrew to actually show some code. And I know that was a lot, and probably not everything was understood, but as you start writing the code, you start seeing these things connect, and it'll make a lot more sense then.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Vern. Cool. So let's just jump straight into the HTML. I'll kind of go over what is happening here. So as Vern said, with HTML, everything is about tags, right? You can see that we start with this HTML tag. That is like telling Peter.
Like a couple command pluses just to blow up the.
Yeah, you're right. Let me do a couple commands. I just don't want to like lose here. I'm gonna hide this. Don't worry. How's this? Cool. Of course. So just understand this is. Don't worry about doc type. This is just telling the file like what we're looking at here. Everything that's HTML, this is where everything is. And in fact, you can actually even establish the language, which this one is obviously English. In here, you can kind of see, and this is why indents are so important, because indents will tell you like where something is inside of. So we have this head tag and we have body. So this head tag contains information that actually isn't going to be rendered on the screen. So we can, this character set, meta tag, don't really know what it's doing. This is one that kind of goes over things I don't know. Like it's like there's like meta tags here that are more important to tell the device what's happening on this website. We have other things on here, like the title. This is actually pretty important. So the title on here, I'm just gonna open up see this hello world right here. See this hello world right here. That is the title. So I could say like, Rune, oop, don't get rid of the tag. Sorry guys. Rune is awesome. If I refresh, there you go. That's the tag, you know. So there's a lot of these kind of things that you haven't thought about right here. This is called a favicon. If anyone's see this little image right here, that's the favicon. Favicons aren't as easy as like just drag a PNG in there and like whatever. You can like look up like favicon generators. It's like super easy, but that's what that is. The head tag is also where you're going to link different files. So as before, I said that we have CSS and JavaScript. Them existing in this folder by themselves isn't going to do anything. You have to link it to this HTML file because HTML is kind of like the root file for everything happening. So this is, as the comment says, it's the style sheet, which is a CSS, and it's importing a style, and also the JavaScript as well. Also, you'll see these kind of comments. If you do command / like with the question mark, it'll create a comment. There's a lot of different languages will have different ways of creating comments. This is what an HTML comment looks like. This is what a CSS comment could look like or should look like. I don't know why it's cool. Anyways, just do command. Don't worry about that. Just do command / if you want to write a comment. Cool. So let's get started with the body. So this is the kind of main first tag that's being rendered. As you see before, I kind of put this P tag in here. P stands for paragraph. This is your general text that's going to be in here. You could really put anything in here. I wanted to bring up this right here. You can just look up HTML tags and I'll have this whole list. This is every single kind of HTML tag you can put. Some of here are kind of deprecated, they're old, but a lot of things like H1s, iframes, images, these are all here. So if you ever need a reference, W3 schools as well as Mozilla are great references for this. But I'm just going to think about my page. I wish I like drew this on here, but or there's more like whiteboard space, but cool. You're going to draw.
Which pen?
So honestly,
I'll draw on this pen.
Okay. So I'm just going to think about this website in two different tags. A header tag, header tag, not to get confused with head tag, completely different. There's a header and then there's a main. So I'm just going to create them right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the open bracket header. I'm going to close it and you'll see that Glich actually automatically closes it right here. So you can see that right here, it automatically closes. So I'm just going to leave that open for right now. But right below, I'm going to make a main. This is where my list is going to be. As I said before, I'm going to do favorite albums from last year. So this header is going to be where it says favorite albums and might have like a link to my other website or whatever. And then main is where the list is going to be. So, but you could have multiple mains. You could have all sorts of things. Just know that tags behave in different ways. And we'll kind of go over that in a second. So I'm just going to start off with one of the most basic tags, which is an H1. So H stands for header. There's 6 different kinds of headers. So I could do from H1 all the way down to H6, I believe. Oops, sorry. All the way down to H6. And the only difference is that they're just different kinds of default heights. I can actually go into CSS and change H1 to be whatever height, whatever, anything. These are just defaults that the browser knows, oh, H1, that should be big, right? So that I don't have to write CSS yet. Yeah. So
it's also important from a stand of like a computer understanding what's going on. So example, someone had accessibility needs and they had vision impairment. If they had a screen reader telling them something and you told them that it was a paragraph, but you just made it like big text as a header, you're giving them incorrect information. You're telling them it's a paragraph, but when it's actually a header. So use the correct one based off of like just general hierarchy, because it becomes important for the computer to understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, accessibility needs for sure. Definitely a lot of best practices to follow. I'm just gonna start kind of going over problems of 2021. You guys can follow along. You guys can make your own list. I was just what I'm going to do. And I'm also not going to worry about what it looks like in this render view right now. Like, again, just as Varun said, even if I want something that have like a different grid, like I have to build it first, top down, that reverse skyscraper kind of model. So I'm going to leave that there. I think I might have maybe like a P tag in here that says by Andrew Goodridge. And then in main, here's what is going to be our main list. So I'm going to go over the A tag is super, super important. A tag is what like makes the internet for many reasons. So I could just put an A tag and put example text in here. Now this isn't really functioning as anything. As Varun said before, we need the attribute href, which stands for hypertext reference. Let's go with that.
That might be a lie.
That might be a lie. But this is essentially any website that you want. So let's do google.com, right? Now, as you can see, this actually turned into a blue text with underline. That means I can actually, if I go into here, refresh, I can actually click that link and it'll go to the website I'm trying to go to, right? That's awesome. Don't worry about understanding this too much, but to each A tag, I'm also going to add something called target equals underscore blank. This essentially makes it so that when I click this link, it opens it up in a blank tab, right? That's the kind of experience I want. I don't want someone to have to go back and forth in their page view. I want, if I click on a link, to go into there to a new website. This is often for like external links. Like if you're trying to link something internally, you might not use target blank, but that's just for this. Now, let's say I wanted to, I'll just reference one of my examples. Let's do this one. Let's say I wanted to have multiple areas. Like for instance, we can see this has two different A tags in between them, and they go to two different links, as you can see on the bottom here. However, what if I wanted this whole div, this whole thing to be the button, so that if a user, or I'm just going to reference users, wanted to click anywhere in here, it'll go to that page. Well, as Varun said, I can actually just, instead of just putting text into here, I can put multiple different elements into here. So I'm going to just open up this A tag and I'm going to put a P tag, and I'm trying to think of things I'll need for my list of favorite albums. I'm going to probably want an order. Below, I might want an image, but we're just going to kind of skip past that. I'm going to want the title of the album, and I'm going to want the artist of the album, right? So let's just kind of go and kind of quickly mock this. So I'm just going to put a quick number in here right now. P tag, under that, I'm going to put, I'm going to do an H2 just because the H1 is the title right here. Actually, I'm going to do an H3 for no particular reason other than it's a little bit smaller. I'm going to put album title. And then below this, I'm going to do an H4. I could also do a P tag. It's totally up to you. The one thing is that when it comes to selectors with CSS, if you're going to have multiple P tags, just keep in mind that that might get confusing when you try to select it. And I'll kind of go over this a little bit more once we get the CSS, but just be careful with what tags you use for now. There's also things such as IDs and classes that makes CSS a lot easier. But for right now, we're just going to kind of skip past that. I'll do album, album, artist, cool. So this is what it looks like right now. Pretty awesome. I'm going to,
something I want to point out
go for it.
is because this whole thing is the tag, right? Like we've wrapped all of these individual elements within the anchor tag. It's not only the text that's clickable. If you actually click in the space between the text, because behind the scenes, there's actually an invisible box around that because they're grouped together. So there's actually an invisible box so that if you click in between, even that gap, because it's part of the group, it's going to take you that page.
Yeah.
So it's not just the text that's clickable on this page. And that'll make a little bit more sense when you get to like styling. You'll probably make a box around it to make it look like a button. But right now it looks like invisible space, but technically it's clickable. For sure.
I'm just going to quickly do this. If this goes over here, no worries. But one thing you can do is if you right click and do inspect towards that area, it'll bring up this, hopefully looks familiar to you. It's exactly what the code is, all on the side of your screen right here. And you can actually just, I'm just going to zoom in here, but you can see everything that's happening right here. So you can see when I click the A tag, or it's not because it's not a block, but you can see all that space, all that margin in between is also a part of it. So cool. I'm not going to complicate this any further. I'm gonna press pretty. That way it condenses everything. I'm just gonna quickly create 5 different ones, and I'll kind of fill out the content later when we have a little bit more time. But just letting that do my work for me. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So now if I refresh this page, we kind of got the structure of what it's going to be. Obviously the content isn't here and the links aren't here, but I just don't want to waste any time with that right now. I can do that later. Okay, how are we doing? How are we feeling? We're feeling good. So yeah, any questions?
Like we're totally
Yeah.
fine with one-on-one instruction.
Yeah, so if you guys, because Quint's also here to like help out. So if I'm like, if we're once we get into CSS, like we're rolling. So if you have any like quick questions, just like stare at Quint over. Any like big things I might have missed?
One thing is that when you saw that he applied the link to that whole block, but it styled the text individually. So he never said, hey, I want this text to be underlined, but that text said, oh, I am inside of a link, so I will style myself like a link. It has that underline, it has the color to it. So that's something that's just important to keep in mind. But I think,
Yeah. And you'll see once we get the CSS, we're actually gonna revert some of these defaults because like I don't really want that text there. It's not my vibe. So I'm gonna try to get rid of that later.
Yes. Are they currently linked to like, so is that slash like actually making a link?
So this slash is essentially, so this opens up a bigger like discussion on what links are. This / is basically saying just like, take me to this, whatever is right there. So this is kind of a placeholder. So if I click this, it's going to bring me to the exact same place. It's going to open up in a new tab because I have that target blank, but slash is essentially saying, just take me to where I am right now. There's a lot more that we could discuss on that.
So for now, we're using it as a placeholder.
Yep. So yeah, cool. All right.
does everybody feel like you have the structure of your site good?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going back to structure.
Does anyone like want, if anyone's like coding? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, for sure. So H1s, I'll just kind of like outside. Well, I'll just on top of this main, I'll kind of go over. So if you create anything like that, H1, if you do it in Glitch, it should automatically complete that. H1 is header. The 1 is the biggest one. 6 is the smallest one.
Is it header or heading?
Heading, maybe.
Yeah.
It's the heading anyways, but heading, yeah. And this is essentially like a different kind of text one. There's tons of different tags. Again, there's a lot of goofy ones. I'm not going to spend too much time on here, but I'll show you my favorite one. It's called marquee. And if you put something in marquee, then it'll just slide across the page. Pretty cool. There's all sorts of different ones like this. I think there's italic too. Like there's all sorts of different stylings like that you can get from tags.
Yeah.
Anyways, just all you know, there's tons of different tags. They behave in different ways. This one probably shouldn't exist anymore, but it does.
Another really good question that Amadeus had that he was too scared to ask in front of everyone.
Okay, you can just out him.
I will say now so that everyone hears.
Yeah.
Is if you just put text outside of a P tag, it'll still show up.
Yeah.
And it just makes it harder to target that with a specific style later on because it's getting its properties from the body tag.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we want to go into inheritance right now, but that's kind of what is happening with that.
Yeah, and also when it's not inside of a P tag, it means less to the computer. Like you're telling it the paragraph, but if it's just like somewhere in the ether, it's just somewhere in the ether. And like that's problematic not only for selection, but again, for accessibility.
If I try to clear it, like, is that big?
Okay, let me.
One, don't worry about this right now. There's also, I don't know if we mentioned, there's also tags that self-close. Most importantly is the image tag. So this one is kind of weird, but this is how you would put an image, just because you can't really put anything inside an image. An image is just an image. And we can get over this later, but there's different attributes that can link to an image. So if you see this and it closes on itself, that's totally normal. Some of them do that. But yeah, I don't want to like say, but yeah. So, oops, sorry. So I actually have two tags in here. I have an H1, and I have a P. The P is going to be pretty small. That's why this one's big, because it's an H1, and the tag below it is P. Got everything, Bell? Nice. I'd love to see it. To close. Oh. I don't know. Just try like doing a bunch. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know how Marquee behaves. It's super old and it shouldn't exist anymore, but it does. And I love it. Yeah. It's one of my favorites. Cool. What kind of song? 237 right now.
What?
237 right now.
Okay.
It's probably a little bit faster with age. I think the CSS is gonna get kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is gonna get crazy. We're gonna need till 3:30.
Yeah. Notes that have my
You want to change the text inside of that. You still want to HTML4, but this is
perfect.
Marquee.
So
MRQUE.
yeah. And if you want, like, if you're just like bored, I'm telling you, there's some wacky ones on here. They took it out. I mean, there's small,
Really, Marquee's
there's strong,
it's
summary.
because it's like not good for your like for accessibility, like so many reasons. So
There's a lot of reasons why it shouldn't exist. But we still use it.
so many UX designers put on their site though, like
Yeah.
a version of it on their site.
Ooh. Another, okay. There's also, I'm gonna just put one more important self-closing tag. Is this one's called a break. It'll break
Wait,
text.
I don't think I've ever heard that either.
We'll just wait.
Okay.
All right. How we feeling? Feeling good?
I feel great, Andrew.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to quickly, before we jump into CSS, because we're gonna keep going, there are self-closing tags like image, and also this is break, which will break a line or like a line break in between any kind of texts. So just want to say that exists. Cool.
So instead of needing an opening and closing tag, it's self-closing because it just has one piece of information and no context.
Cool.
Like a command, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. How are you feeling? Feeling like we're ready for CSS?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take it away.
I appreciate the support, Helen. All right, I'm back. Yeah. So firstly, we're gonna talk about layout with CSS. CSS does many things. Layout's one of them. Other one is like visual styling. We're gonna break it down with layout in specific at the beginning, and then we're gonna move towards visual styling a little bit later. The goal here is to understand the box model. I'll explain what that is. We're also gonna understand selectors and declarations. Again, we'll get to that. And then lastly, we'll learn about like, what are the properties that we can manipulate to actually get specific styles. So first things first, what does CSS stand for? It stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Again, we'll break this down. Sheet just means like a text sheet. Like it's just text that, so it's referencing that as a coding language again. The two important parts are cascading a style. You're styling the website. Very simple. Cascading is the only term that's a little funky, and it's not super important to understand as a beginner. But what cascading means is that there's an internal hierarchy within CSS that gives priority to the way you style things. So this is an example, and I'll kind of explain it. I can say that all students must wear red, but Belle must wear blue. It's the specificity. So cascading means that like, because I specifically told Belle to wear blue, she has to listen to that command over the all students should wear red. So it's talking about there's a hierarchy in listening to the commands. Again, not super important for what we're going to be doing today, but understand that it listens to specific rules over other rules based off of this internal hierarchy. All right, so we're going to talk about the box model first before we actually get into how to write the code. So we talked about this inverse or reverse skyscraper, but we also need to talk about the box model. And it's really important because it helps you understand how code works again. So with code, you're not actually defining shapes. You're always defining a rectangle because you're building stacking stuff. So even when you draw a circle on a code page, technically it's bounded by a rectangle. So it's like if you click in Photoshop, remember when you click on a shape, it'll have like the little bounding box around it. So think of it in that way. So the website, so it's really important to understand the box model because when you're stacking things, you're going to want to pay attention to how the box model works. So in terms of the components that make the box model up, it goes from into out, so from inside to out. So there's the content itself, then there's padding, then there's a border, and then there's a margin. So if we're look at breaking this down, within the content itself, the content has a width and a height, and this is the text itself. So this is like the text, what is the box model, is the content. So example, this was a paragraph tag with that text inside of it. Then there's padding, which is space directly outside of that content. And then there's a border. So the border is a stroke that goes around not only the content, but it's after the padding also. And then there's margin, which is space after the element. So after what's the space between this element and the next element? So a good way to understand this is this image from Twitter. I'm a peer tutor and I've used this many times and I just love this example. But think of your body as the content itself. And the padding is the clothes you wear, like how thick your clothes are. And the border would be your silhouette or an outline drawn around you with your clothes on. And then the margin is the space between you and the next person. And during the times of COVID, there's a little joke on the bottom. They recommend 2 meters of margin. I'm not sure how closely we're adhering to that anymore, but regardless. So that's the box model, and it'll play a little bit more importantly once we actually start doing some of the structure. So like how you'll actually make space between objects, you'll make the cards, and you'll want to have space between the cards themselves. So margin and stuff will come into play there. But how do you write CSS itself? CSS is made up of 2 parts, really. It's a selector and then a declaration. So the selector is telling the CSS what to actually style. So it's like, so when I said Bell, wear red, Bell would be the selector. I'm telling Bell to wear red. The declaration is that you have to wear red. So selector and then declaration. The declaration is made up of 2 parts, a property and a value. So the property is what you're actually changing. So in this case, there's font size here. So I want the font size to be 14 pixels tall. So the property of font size is going to be manipulated to change to be 14 pixels. And the way, if you look at the statement, there's a few other important components. After the property, you want to have a semicolon, a colon, and then after the value, you want to have a semicolon. And this way, CSS knows that it's properly structured, and the semicolon basically indicates that the next declaration is to start. Now, there's many different types of selectors, and we're going to see a few in action today. We might even move to a few beyond the ones that are actually on the screen if we have some extra time. But the most common or the most basic one is the element itself. So remember in HTML, we wrote the paragraph tag, right? To select that in CSS, you only write the P. So like example, this was an H1, you just write H1. Don't do the less than or greater than sign. But then there's also these ideas of classes and IDs. So this is where you're getting a little bit more specific. An element just might be any element on the screen, but a class is something that you define to a tag. It's one of the attributes that we talked about. And this helps you identify things specifically on the page. So I might say, I'm going to give Andrew and me the class of teachers, or we're teachers today. Like that's our class. So then I can say teachers must wear red. And then the way that you would actually tell the CSS that the teachers must wear red is like period, and then the name of the class that you assigned over here. So that's how you're actually choosing a specific group of things. And then IDs. IDs can only be given to one object in the whole page. So classes can be given to many things. IDs can be only given to one person. So my ID might be my name. So a paragraph with the ID of Varun. So I can be like Varun, wear blue. And the way that you select an ID in CSS is with the not ampersand, sorry, a pound sign. Again, you can reference W3 schools. They have all of the different selectors. There's many more, and they're some of them are really crazy and do really cool things and help you be very specific. But for the most part, you're going to be able to work around just the two at the top up here. In terms of properties, there's a lot of properties that we're going to be using today too. I think we're going to be hitting all of these. So border, margin, and padding from the box model that we talked about earlier. There's going to be background color. This is what's going to manipulate your background color. Color, weirdly enough, controls the color of the text. So it's not text color, it's just color. Something that's a little confusing, especially because they do like text size. Font family is the typeface you're using. So like Times New Roman, Helvetica, whatever you want to use. And display, this is something we're going to talk about right after this slide actually. So display is how you're going to handle the structure of your site. And it gets really confusing really quickly. So
Great.
So by default, I talked about this idea of the reverse skyscraper, right? Like you're stacking from top to bottom. This is great for the most part, because again, the websites, because you can't be absolutely position something with ease without having problems on different screen sizes, it's helpful to have this where it creates the stacking thing. And that's the display property of block. And this is the default property of a display. But we're actually going to be using something called FLUX today. And what FLUX is, it's actually a very flexible layout, as the name indicates, where you can either flex something in a column or a row, and I'll go a little bit into it soon. But for those of you that are UX, think of FLUX as auto layout. It helps you structure things either in a row or in a column, and then automatically make adjustments to it. And the reason it's flexible is because you can tell all these elements to be center aligned, or you can tell them to left align, despite not being full width. The problem with block is that it's automatically full width all the time. You can also tell it to grow or shrink accordingly. So FLUX, although we won't go into all those things I just talked about regarding FLUX, FLUX is typically the most powerful display method on the web currently. And again, if you switch it to FLUX direction row, that's how you actually create the things in a row. So before we were doing everything in column, and blocks even handled in column itself. But if you want to do something in a row, just change the FLUX direction to be a row. Now, in terms of display types, we talked about block, FLUX at the column, and then FLUX at the row. There's actually a bunch of other types, including inline and grid. I don't really use anything else besides FLUX, grid, and block. But there are certain use cases where you might want to use something else. But for today, we'll make do with just these three. All right, back to Andrew.
All right, let's go.
Ready. All right. Thank you, Varun. All right, strap in, guys. So let's just look at this first one that should be in everyone's file. It's the body, it's selecting the body, it's margin of 0. We're totally cool with that. All right. Let's get started by selecting, if you guys use a main, let's do header first. So let's select our header. And the first thing I want to do is I kind of just like how these examples, everything's like centered in the middle really nicely. You can actually see how even when I rescale, it still stays centered. This is awesome for when I look at this on a phone or a phone browser. So let's just get things centered in the middle. So with header, I'm going to set, but before so I could set this as flex. It's not going to do anything. It's flex defaults to a row, to organize in a row. However, you can see how if I go into here, like it's not, and if I try to center it with, I'll go over this in a second, but if I try to center it, it's not centered. Why isn't it centered, right? And just like how Varun said before, how it kind of stretches the entire way, I actually have to set a width first before it'll actually get centered. So margin auto, without going into it too much, is essentially margin auto will try to center it to whatever the parent is, right? But again, it's not working. Why isn't it working? Because I need to set the width. So there's a bunch of different ways we could set the width. I'm just going to quickly first, if we all understand this, I'm just going to do flex direction column so that it's in a column. Right, this is where I want it to be before. I can set the width with a variety of different kind of values, right? Let's do 300 pixels at first. Now, as you can see, it's centered, right? The text isn't centered. I'll go over how we can do that in a second. But that main, I'm gonna just do this here. Actually, this is probably one of the most helpful things to learn with CSS. If you want to figure out what the heck is going on in the back and with the things you're doing, do background and then any color. I'm just gonna say red. Again, I'll go over different kind of values, but this will tell me exactly what is happening. For instance, if I do body, I do background. You can do either background color, or I'm just gonna do background as a shorthand, background blue. The whole thing's the body. We knew this, but it's a really good way of just reassuring yourself like, okay, I know the background's body's blue, the header's red. It's a good way of just mentally understanding what's happening. But with this structure that we're gonna go over first, the colors are going to look really wonky. It's going to be really bad, but it's just so that we can understand what's happening. However, this is cool, right? I mean, it's fine. I'm going to set this like 600 pixels or maybe 700. But what we see what happens is when we set pixel values, ooh, I don't like that, right? It's not centered anymore. It kind of goes off the page once it gets up below once the browser is below 700, that's, not very cool. So as I said before, where is my file? There's a bunch of different kinds of values that we can set here. We can set percentages. So I'm gonna demo this, but it's not what I'm actually gonna end up using, like 60%. What this is gonna do is say, hey, however the size of the entire parent, or in this case, the body, which is everything, the width is 60% of that. So as you can see, it follows that. It's gonna stay 60%, which is pretty cool. However, percent gets kind of weird depending on like what container you're in. So I'm gonna use a better one, which is VW, which is view width. There's view width, there's also view height, which is 60% of the height. Just let's avoid that, but there's just know that also exists. View width is what we're gonna primarily be using today. So now, if I go back to my example, it's 60% of the view width, and I don't have to worry about anything else. So I'm going to quickly do a couple of things, just follow along here. I'm going to align this text. The way I do that, if I do text align, center. What that will do is think about, if you use Figma, think about left, center, right, or right aligns. I could do right, I could do left, do anything like that. Also, CSS is inherently confusing because you will refer to things as font, text, and just, as Varun said, with color, just nothing. Got to bear with it. It's very confusing. Cool. So this is kind of looking pretty good. Let's do a couple of other things. Let me just check to see if I'm missing anything. One thing I might want to do is, I'm not really a big serif guy. So I know Varun mentioned before font family. If you actually want to use, there's only a couple fonts that are built into every browser and every system. And you actually have to link it through sites like, you can either link your own file, TTF, or like WOF, and you also can use sites like Google Fonts are great to importing different fonts, but luckily all browsers understand certain things like sans serif. If I spell it right. So if I do font family sans serif, it'll turn to a basic sans serif. If anyone wants to know how to get custom fonts, we can go over that. Another thing, as you can see here, is the background is set to red. CSS can be,
Why did you put that in the body instead of in the header? We're trying to do the font in the header.
For sure. So I actually want so if I just wanted my text in the header to be sans serif, I put this in sans serif, or I put this in header, right? But I want all of my text, and if I'm going to select everything, I might as well put it in the body. Going back to HTML, we can see everything we're doing is inside this body. So if I want to select everything, might as well just put this in the body, right? Let's say I want to change, let's not do this, but let's say I wanted to change the color to yellow, right? We'll get over that. Yeah, no, I was thinking this text is purple for a reason we'll go over in a minute, but yeah, McDonald's. No, sorry, we're not doing that. Anyways, back to my original point. So let's say I wanted a really specific color that's not going to be red, blue, or any of these kind of weird default colors. CSS understands a couple of different values for color. It understands RGB. If anyone's done like processing before, you can understand that this is kind of how RGB is, or red, green, blue, so, between 0 and 255. This is one way of doing it. Obviously, if you work with Figma, we can also do hex values. So that's just, I don't know hex values at the top of my head, but this is a gray. So there's a bunch of different kinds of values that we can put in color, but it's stupid easy when you're just trying to get layout working to just do background, blue, yellow, red, green, whatever. Cool. Okay, so I think that's actually pretty good for my header right now. I'm gonna do one more thing, which might be a little confusing. I'm gonna set this width to 90 view width, and I'm gonna set max width to 600 pixels. Now, there's such thing as min and max width. What this will do, as the name kind of describes, is it'll kind of max the amount, and it's really powerful because we can actually use different values. For instance, the width is a view width value, but the max width is a pixel value. So that means that, as you can see, like it'll be 90 width, or 90% of the view width until it gets to 600 pixels, and it'll cut off and it'll just center. So this is something awesome. This is a big responsive thing when you're making responsive things. Like, for instance, if we go back to these examples, you'll see how it's only until it gets to a certain point that it'll close in on it. That'll close in. That's because the main here is probably about 95 view width. So that's just kind of a big thing. I'm getting rid of my notes.
Someone had a question, right?
Oh yeah, any questions?
All right, thought someone took my hand, but
Yeah, what's up?
So if you're designing for like web and then for mobile,
Mhm.
how do you find those specific widths that you should use?
So, oh, like your browser width? iPhone browser width is probably
378 or
78,
375.
So there's like a canonical list of like, if you want to be above a certain amount, this is where mobile usually is. The manufacturers of those devices also have a vested interest of kind of keeping the same amounts so that, you know, if you go on their phone, it doesn't give you a weird desktop or tablet experience. And
Yeah.
so there's a list of like, below this, it's probably mobile, between here and here, it's mobile landscape, between here and here, it's tablet, and between here and here, or between here and above, that's desktop.
Yeah.
And you can make it arbitrary. Like if you want to have something that only looks a certain way, like on a very specific phone, you can target the width of that device using CSS. We aren't going to do that today because all of our stuff is going to be built to go on every single platform. But there is a list of different values you can use.
Yeah, just some quick info. If you want to test to see if it's going to be responsive, if you try to decrease your browser all the way, this is a good rough estimate of what it will look like on an iPhone. Also, inspect element is totally your friend here. It'll tell you, it'll give you the exact pixel values on the top right here. Oh, sorry. If you might have to click this button right here, again, don't worry about this. You don't want to. If you right click anywhere, do inspect, you can see everything. And then if you go in and out, you can actually see where the pixel value is on the top right here. So you can just keep that in mind if you're like trying to figure these things out.
You also click the little device thing and then choose a device you want to test it on.
Yeah, if I wanted to test how this looks on an iPad Air, we could do that. Just know that this was kind of mess around with scale and yeah, but if you want to do that, go for it. I am not going to do that. Cool. So this looks pretty good. Does everyone understand so far how like the width and things like that work? So I'm just going to kind of keep going through. I'm going to keep this as red. It's kind of ugly right now. It's whatever. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my main. I'm going to do exactly what I did with my header. I'm going to do display flex. I'm going to do flex direction. You can see now all of this is in a row. This, which if that's your thing, I mean, it's not very responsive, but you know, it's a thing. But I kind of want this to be in a row. So I'm going to put this in a column. And then the last piece of this is I'm going to put margin auto. And then just so I know, I'm going to do background green. So I know what everything is. Now, once again, I haven't set the width. So the width is in the entire thing now. So instead, I'm going to set the width of the main. I'm actually going to, okay, this might be kind of confusing. I'm actually going to avoid this and I'm just going to set the width of each A tag. I'm going to leave the main to be the full width. The one thing I did want to mention is, let's say I wanted to kind of add some space between this header and my main tag. I can actually what I could do is there's a lot of different ways to write this. So this will kind of be more important with padding, but I can actually set, so I could do auto once, or I can do auto. What this is essentially doing is assigning, there's 4 different values here. It's doing top, right, bottom, left. So that is kind of like the view. So let's say I wanted to increase just the top margin, but keep everything else auto. I can change that to 30 pixels and it'll change just the top. So that's something you could do. Or what I tend to do is instead of having that all inline, I could just set margin to auto, everything to auto. And then after the fact, I can go and say margin dash top 30 pixels, which is a little bit easier to understand. Again, once we get into padding, it will make more sense, but this looks pretty good for me with the main. Now, this was where CSS gets kind of fun because I'm going to select the A tag. I have 5 different A tags that have the 5 different albums that represent the 5 different albums. So everything I do here is going to represent all of those. I'm going to first, I'm just going to copy and paste this. Again, this is just one way to do CSS. It's not all, but I'm just going to do that. You can see things are centered aligned because I did flex, it's in a column, and it's margin auto. Let's say I wanted to have all my text inline like that. You can see how it still goes down the list. And here, let me background yellow. You can see now how this looks, right? So we have the main, just like in here, the main is green. The A has a background color of yellow, and all of them are kind of centered below. So I'm just going to keep, oh, I'm not going to keep this. I'm going to add column. But if you're doing anything that needs to be in a column, feel free to do that. And then I'm just going to, just like I did with my header, I'm going to text align center. Cool. Okay. I think the next thing I'm going to do is set a width because I didn't in the main. So I'm going to set this width. I'm going to do something very similar to the header. I could have it as the same value, but I want it to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to do, instead of 90 view width, I'm going to do something like 80 view width and then a max width of 500. Let's see how that looks. So here's how we're looking. It's kind of crazy, but you can see how this behaves, how this kind of gets pushed once it hits 90% of the view width. This gets locked when it gets 80% of the view width. And that's good. The last thing I'm going to change for structure is between each A tag, I want a margin top. Might not be the best way of doing it, but it's definitely the easiest in our case. As I said before, we just set margin auto right here. However, down here, I can set margin auto to 15 pixels. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a little bit of breathing room in between each thing we do. It's going to add 15 pixels of space. And you see, it even does it at the top too. So there's different selectors that, like, let's say I didn't want this to be selected. I could use classes, but better, there's different kinds of selectors. I can maybe ignore the first child. Again, we're not going to get into that, but that's just know that that's definitely possible. I don't know why I refreshed the code. But yeah, so this is we kind of got the structure down for our site. Obviously, there's a lot to be improved. And the content itself isn't filled in, but this kind of works the same way. I mean, if we look at some of these, it works the exact same way it works for this, right? We have our header, we have our main, which has some padding in it, and then we have our 5 different A tags, and they all have a hover effect that maybe we can get into later. But same thing with this, right? We have our header, we have our main. The main you can't see, but it exists. It's just invisible. Or just doesn't have a background color associated to it. And then we have our these are actually div tags. And inside there's all sorts of different elements that are blocked out. I'll just kind of quickly go over, just because our example is kind of basic. I just want to quickly go over like what's happening in something like this, right? So if you can see here on the right side, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna increase this like a lot. So if you see here on the right side, so we have the main. Instead of a tag, these are div tags, and they have a class name. We're just gonna ignore that for right now. But what's happening here is I actually have, so I split this up into a top and a bottom. This is being in a FLUX. This div is organizing in a column. But with this top one, I have this image to the left and the text to the right. So what I did is I actually created 2 divs inside this top that's left and right. And top is actually, this is saying, okay, display as flex, but display as a row. Like if I change this to column, look, it's in a column now. There's all sorts of kind of different things. And then again, even within this right one, I have two different tags that are just top to bottom. So there's tons of different ways to use flex direction to kind of organize your stuff. So that is kind of all for the structure. There's a lot of styling that needs to be done. Do you have more slides on that, or?
No, I have one thing on animation.
Okay, cool. So let's get to styling. Let's kind of go. Oh yeah, any questions? Any questions? Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
This area, at least with our website. But let's take a couple minutes to break and we'll just kind of walk around the room and make sure everybody's good here.
Yeah.
And then kind of go from there once we're all ready to continue. And if you're already here, good job.
You guys do that. I'm gonna input the content. I'm sorry, I'm cheating.
Let's try to see kind of those.
Okay.
Let's try to So you know we want to target both to A and so we don't have a space one size one to fill the whole space. So let's try to give them.
Bring down the width. Yeah, the max width is so big, so like you're forcing it, the width is like what it's like installed, and max width is like upper limit or lower limit. So, yeah, that's how it's wrong. Just causing this, right? So on a computer, the size, the maximum width, you can have a 1,000 columns, but like that's
What's up? Sorry. Okay, these are all. Yeah, it's. This is the URL. It's CFYW CYFW-example.glitch.me.
It's just a
Yeah, what's up? Yeah.
That's gonna center that. How do we get them to stick with that? Like the content. Oh, yeah. That was like the items.
So if you unorganize in a second, since you have a P tag, you can just leave it without it. But I'm gonna select all the P tags. And I can text file.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Sorry, yeah, you go to the internet, it's actually
Like this one, or this is your definition. So you just tell it what the button is. And then,
So you can also see here, it's not. So instead of text in the center, center that's just
and then
if it's just, if you have multiple things in the center,
so you can see
it's just texting everything. Okie dokie. Everyone's good? Just give me a second. Oh, oops.
Which means that you're doing 800 8 times the size of the screen.
How we doing over here? Cool. Sorry, I know this is probably like.
I'm having a great time.
So 8 times.
We have
100 before the second.
Yeah, I took the course before, so I kind of like.
This, what we're doing next should be maybe hopefully a bit like, if you feel like you already know CSS and HTML. Oh, okay, well. Cool. All right, should we get started? Keep going soon. Chugging along.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's just kind of like finish out, make this like sort of enjoyable to look at. I'll go over a couple of other things too. I have a couple of just like default colors that I'm just gonna cheat. I also, while you guys weren't looking, I just inputted all the text here. Sorry guys. I'm gonna do a couple of things. So I know I want my background to be this hex value, and you can just do this in Figma on your own time or like whatever. I just kind of did this beforehand. I want my cards, which are my A tags. I want that to have a background of this value. And
if you just Google color picker, they have one.
Yep. Cool. And then I'm just going to quickly do.
Can you remove the green?
I'm gonna move the green in a second. I'm gonna select my one thing is I want this main, my favorite to be this. It's either blue or green, I forget, but this value, it's a green. I'm gonna get rid of the red because getting rid of the training wheels, getting rid of this because we got this now. Cool. Now I'm just gonna change my P tag to, just understand, I only have one P tag on this whole file, and it's just in here. If you have other P tags, it will affect all your paragraph tags. But I just have this one, so I'm just going to select just this P tag right here, and I'm going to change it to this blue color. I'm actually going to switch it. Whoa. Cool. Okay. And then in a second, I'm going to go over padding and borders. So I'm actually gonna do one. Okay, let's actually style the text first. So
actually have multiple P tags, so if you notice, even these change
oh,
color.
I do have multiple P tags. Sorry, I lied. We can change that in a second though. As you see, like this underline is probably like not what we're going for. So I'm gonna do this in the A tag. I'm just gonna like indent it a little bit so it's easier to read. If you want to get rid of the underline, there's a property called text decoration. There's a bunch of different ways you can decorate your text. Right now, by default, there's an underline. I'm just going to say text decoration none. We'll get rid of that outline. There's, again, if you want to, some code editors will like give you options. This one doesn't, which is, I think it's good for beginners, but there's that. And then from here, here's a big thing. If you want to if you want to change the default color of an A tag, of anything in an A tag, you need to change it from the A tag. So let's say I had a P tag with things that are a little bit different because the A tag or the P tag right here is selecting all P tags, but just know if your text is still purple, you have to change it from within the A tag. I'm going to change this to the blue color, which is the blue color right here. Cool. So this is looking okay. There's one thing that's kind of bothering me, which is kind of annoying, which is that there's a lot of space between, for me personally, there's a lot of space. If you guys followed along to a T, you might have a lot of space in between if you have multiple tags in an A tag. If I want to select just the H1s or just the content within a tag, I can do A space and then whatever tag. So with this, I actually don't have any these because these are H3s, but if I do the tag, if I do a tag within a tag, yeah. So if you do it subsequently like that, it will just select, for instance, if I did P, if I did A space P, it would just select these P tags that are within an A tag. I'm just gonna select this H3 and H4 real quick. And as I said before, when it comes to these H tags, they have default styling to them. One of them being this kind of confusing one that's called margin block start and margin block end. Again, this is kind of just like a pain in the butt that you're not supposed to really like know, but I'm just going to change these to a value of, okay, I'm going to, just like there's a lot of different ways to change the colors, there's a lot of different ways to change text sizes. One of them being EM or REM. I, off the top of my head, have no idea what EM stands for.
It's just like a typographic thing.
Yeah. M dash. Yes, that's the size of the M dash. Anyways, that. So, and it's a little without, you can use pixel and a pixel width. That's totally fine. Just know that nowadays browser or pixels are getting smaller and smaller. Like think of like DPI, like screens are getting much more, and that kind of confuses the web because the web was based off of pixels, but now we decided that we want like retina and all these like crazy displays that kind of mess that up. So REM and EM kind of, again, you can use pixel all you want. I'm just going to use this for kind of like a best practice. Anyways, I'm just going to change this, and as you can see, it kind of decreases the sizing here. And
Just to
same.
repeat, this is selecting the H4s inside of an H tag. So this is like hierarchy if you think about it.
Mhm.
This is like the parent, child, and you can keep on going on. So it can be like, you can do the body, the A tags inside of the body, and then the H4s inside of the, like, you can keep stacking it to go very specific and point at a specific one. So like we could be like this room, and then people sitting at that table, and then fuzzy, like that, like, so you keep on going on, like, and declaring something in specific.
I'm just gonna do the same thing with the H1. Just don't worry about it too much. And as you can see, where we were before, to where we're now we're kind of working with something a little bit here. And let's say, like, for instance, there's a lot of space between this P tag and all the other ones. If I wanted to kind of see like what's going on under the hood, I can actually go into here and press right click inspect, and I can actually see that this P tag again has this huge block start, block end. I think it would change if I changed the display. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to add P2. I'm just going to add another one of these. I got to cut this out of the video. This is like not, anyways, cool. Let's just go with this for now. One thing that let's explore is padding. So as Varun said before, margins kind of change how it's positioned on the outside. Padding will actually change how the things are on the inside.
I'm sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
So just to make it clear, so H3 is affecting the hyperlink H3 only?
Yeah, it'll affect the H3 that's inside the A tag.
Okay.
So anything, and there's a bunch of other, these are, Varun said there's tons of different kinds of selectors. You could do comma if I want to do A tags and that. So there's a lot of different ways. Again, if you just like look up like CSS selectors, there's tons of different, and I feel like you're ever looking at CSS code and like, what the hell is happening here? There's tons of things like that. This will just affect like what's happening inside.
Okay.
But I'm going to change the padding a little bit. I'm going to do 10 pixels at first and see how that works. I probably want a little bit more, like 15. but I'm gonna do something kind of weird. I'm gonna add just two values here. What this is doing, this essentially equals, let me just write this out. This essentially equals this. It's just shorthand for it. So essentially what it's doing is it's telling, just like this one is top, right, bottom, left. If I have two values, this will be top and bottom, and then left and right. That way I can say, okay, give me a 15 pixel padding on the top and bottom, but don't give me any padding on the left and right, just because my content doesn't really stretch out that far. And I don't really want to have to deal with that. One other thing I'll add with padding is border. This can get kind of confusing, and you can also split this into multiple declarations, but I'm gonna do it all inline. I'm gonna just type this out. So essentially, and you can actually do this in different orders, I believe, but there's three values that border is looking for. You can actually do different ones. Like if I want like dotted's kind of cool. It'll actually change it to like a dotted look, which if that's what you're going for, go for it. I'm gonna do a solid line. I'm gonna have the color as black, and then I'm gonna have 1 pixel be how much it is. So if I do 10, it's gonna be huge. It's not really what I'm going for. And I actually have a border color ready here as well. So I'll just kind of put this in here instead of that. It's kind of more subtle.
How do you know that border needed those three values? Because like the other ones, like color, it makes sense you give it a color. Padding, it makes sense you give it, a pixel amount or like a sizing. How did you know that those are the three things that border needed?
For sure. I mean, if I looked up border CSS property, again, this is like what all coding is. Like I do this like anytime I code. If you just look that up, you can see there should be, well, or maybe I'll go to Mozilla, it's probably better. It'll tell you like what you need. So like here are some examples here. Like there's, if you just do solid or you do dashed, again, different values, all sorts of things. Here's exactly, this property is a shorthand for the following CSS properties, and it's border color, border style, and border width. So this is, if you're like, I don't know like exactly what it is, like definitely look up some of these pages. They're super helpful. I'm gonna do one more. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Some of you might really like this. With border comes another property that's border radius, which is how you get those nice little rounded rectangles. So I'm gonna set this to 5 pixels at first. Ooh, I'm gonna do a little bit more. But we can see already, ooh, that's looking real nice. The color's a little whack, but it's fine. But that's how you get that nice little rounded corner. You can do that kind of on anything. One thing I just realized that my text is like really stuck to the top. So I'm just gonna push that down a little bit. If I do H1, margin top, 30 pixels, that will, oops, that didn't do anything. Or I'll do it the main actually.
It's in the header, actually.
In the header, thank you. Not the main, not the dash. There we go. Okay, just a little bit more breathing room. So essentially, this is super basic, but this kind of constitutes, this is kind of like the beginning of what you could do. I also wanted to explore one kind of easy CSS thing that really kind of spices things up. If I want to control what happens when I hover over anything on this page, I can actually do a:hover. And now any property in here will change what it looks like when I hover over. So let's say I want the background to be like red now. Now, if I hover over all these, ooh, yeah, that's looking beautiful. Yeah. But you can see with a little bit more time, a little bit more, care and some planning, how you can really get some fun things. That's how I did this. If you look really closely, you can actually see it's the text change as well. Again, real quick, that I just want to make sure, because we're 5 of 330. This is like super solid. It's kind of like a weird harsh transition, which brings me to transition, which essentially allows it so that any kind of animation, there's also a whole thing of CSS animation. We don't have time for that day, but any kind of animation, hover kind of exists within this world of animation. You add transition, and then I'm gonna do 0.3 seconds. That's 0.3 S. It will, ooh, look at that fade in, right? And if I wanted to, I could do all sorts of things. Like for instance, if I wanted to, if I hover over my H1, let me just make sure that's an H1. Yes, it is. If I wanted to hover my H1, ooh, hover. I wanted the color to change to orange. Yeah, I can do that too. I'll do the same thing. So a lot of fun to be had, right? A lot of fun. I'll probably just like stay after if anyone has like wants to go into like, I could like demo how like to get like an image involved. Oh, does anyone have any questions on like what I just the styling?
Can you go over how to get the rounded edges on your board?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's border. Also important to know is I don't actually have to have a border for border radius to work. So don't think that you have to have both. Border dash radius and then like 10 pixels or whatever you want. What?
Oh, okay.
And as a, yeah, you can actually do like, there's all sorts of like, remember when we talked about view width, you can actually just put view width in here. And this will change it depending, it's kind of wacky, but it'll change the thing based off of the view width. Again, there's tons of fun values. View width is a very important one with CSS. All sorts of things like that. Quinn,
It's just worth noting with these transitions and like the one we had covered, you can, like, we spent a long time kind of crafting what that A would look like. We can have each one of those properties and even different properties be different values for them. So if you wanted to hover over it and the corner got rounder or less round or something, maybe you wanted a box shadow, maybe you wanted the text to change color. All those things that we did to set up what it looks like.
like you can do all sorts of just anything your heart desires, you can do with CSS, right? Like all sorts of, this is kind of weird because as it's rotating, like you're not hovering it over anymore. Anyways, but
I actually have a slide. I actually have a slide talking about that. I can go over it really quick.
Let's do this. If you guys want to head out.
yeah, I don't want to.
3:30. Varun has something very important to share with us. So
No, it's one slide. I'm like, it's not gonna kill anyone.
Go for it.
So Andrew only in this transition only put the durations, and you can do that. But if you really break down the duration, this transition property, there's 3 parts to it. So there's an animatable property name, a duration, and then a timing function. Let's just not worry about the timing function, but this is what you're animating. By default, it's all. So like Quinn said, it'll just transition everything, but you can tell the background to transition in a different way from anything else. And something important to understand here is that animatable property name. Not everything is actually animatable. You can't animate display. You can't animate specific things because the way that animation works in CSS is that it's actually tweening between 2 states. So there's a final state and a current state. So when we have to hover, think of it, it's before hover and after hover. And it's guessing how to change between those two. So there actually has to be a logical progression between the two. It does most things, background color, like everything you would want it to, but like there's certain things that you won't be able to animate because they're not animatable because there's no like in between stage between those 2 things. With color, you can animate between that because you can change the color slightly over time to go to another color. Anyways, that's
Awesome.
That's it.
All right. Well, we're at 3:30. I'm gonna stay and just like maybe keep working on this. You guys are welcome to stay as well. If you need to head out, go for it. I hope today was a good, you guys had some sort of learned something today. One thing, how many people are on the FLUX Discord? Is that like a lot of people, some people? Okay, well, if you want to post your websites in the, sorry, I don't have Discord open. I'm trying to figure out a good Discord channel that we could just spam our websites in. Let's just do general. Spam your websites in the general. No, not announcements. at everyone every time.
do you ask anything? Ask if your website's good.
Yeah, put your, okay, I'm just gonna put like a little message that's like, got it. Oh my God, okay. Websites from today's Workshop. That was not the desired effect. Feel free to put them below.
Do you want to create a thread?
I don't know how to create a thread.
Right click it once you're done.
Sorry. Why are there two different emoji things?
Your channel temporarily.
Okay, right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Use such crazy. Thread.
Website. Sorry, this is learning on the spot here. Websites.
Websites.
Okay, there you go. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys. If you guys have any questions, we'll be around to answer them. But thank you guys so much for coming in today. Gotta get rid of that. This is not happening.
The invite link to the website.
Yeah, we need 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Wait, the link is invalid.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
What link?
Can you update the? Ooh. Can you create a new Discord link?
Oh yeah, you can.
No, like the invite on the website like is expired.
Oh, the invite on the
apparently. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I do know it expires. I can't do it right away.
Okay.
Do you want me to do it right now?
Or wait, Fozzie, can you make an invite? I think you're an admin. Can you? Damn.
Aren't you not?
Yeah, let me do this real quick.
You can just airdrop it to whoever needs it. I think everyone has Max here. Or like most people have Max here.
Matt. Wait, did Matt leave? Matt, text me your website.
Oh, yeah.
Fozzie, I just texted in our WhatsApp. I just texted a new link to that.